Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Korpita, for
You're
doing this
welcome.
interview.
Sure, my pleasure.
And I just want to start off by asking, how does one become a pre-med student? And do you have to be a science major to be one?
Well, here at USC, pre-med is just a self-designation. So if a student is hopefully going to try and apply to medical school at some point in their undergraduate career, then we would consider them pre-med. And no, you don't have to be a science major. You can major in anything, certainly, and be pre-med and apply to medical school. The important thing is that you take the science courses that the medical schools require.
College is very different from high school, with courses being much more difficult. So what are some good suggestions and advice you will give to freshmen and sophomores on doing well on difficult classes such as organic chemistry, intro physics, biology, or chemistry classes, to name a few? Also, what would you say to individuals who might have done poorly on one of these difficult courses?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think to prepare for those courses, it's important. I think a lot of students underestimate the importance of math courses. And I think in high school you really should stay on that math track and do as much math as you can. And then certainly exposure to any of those sciences is going to help. Exposure to the biology, the chemistry, the physics in high school will help. At least you'll be familiar with it once you get to college, and that might help out a little bit. And what was the next question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, if you do badly, if you do poorly?
If you do badly. A lot of people feel terrible. They think they can't go to medical school because they got a C. And
well, sometimes it takes you more than a semester or a semester to figure out how it's best for you to study. And students if you don't do well in that course, maybe it's a biology course, but if you demonstrate later on that you can do the work in the upper level biology courses, once you've figured out how you best learn, then certainly a C in a course as you're in your freshman year shouldn't necessarily keep you out of med school.
I see. Many students find studying abroad to be a great experience that enriches their undergrad experience. Are there any issues with pre-med students who would like to spend a summer, a semester, or maybe more studying abroad?
No, I think it's a great idea. I think certainly pre-med students as physicians are going to be working with all kinds of different people, and so certainly the more exposure you get to different types of people and different cultures, different religions is going to be beneficial. Probably need to be careful when you're scheduling, just so that you can take the MCAT on time, so that you're around when medical school interviews are going on, that sort of thing. But many of our pre-med students study abroad, so it shouldn't be an issue.
Now I want to move on to applying to medical school. Many incoming freshmen have AP credits.
Mm-hmm.
Will they fulfill the requirements for medical school?
For most medical schools, yes. You really have to, each medical school has its own policies about that, so you really have to double check any medical school you might be interested in applying. You want to make sure that you know their policies. A lot of times, a lot of schools will say if you use AP credit in a science, then they would like for you to have taken upper level sciences while you're in college to demonstrate your proficiency in that area.
What would you say is a typical profile of a successful medical school applicant?
Well, it depends if you're talking about elite private schools or state schools. I mean, here in South Carolina, the average MCAT is probably between a 28 and a 30 at the 3 medical schools in South Carolina. Average GPA is around a 3.7. But certainly beyond that, you have to have exposure to healthcare. You have to be able to demonstrate to an admissions committee that you know what you're getting into, and that means that you have to have been exposed to doctors, to patients, to the healthcare delivery system, and so you certainly need those things, as well as just demonstrating benevolence with community service and leadership experiences and that sort of thing. So you need more than the numbers, but you definitely need those numbers.
Mm-hmm. What is MCAT and what is MCAS?
Good question. MCAT is the medical college admission test, which is the standardized test that medical schools have you take to get into medical school. And then AMCAS is the application service, so it's the American Medical College Application Service, and that is the service to which all pre-med students will apply when they apply to medical school. And AMCAS compiles all the information, your transcripts, your letters of evaluation, your application, your MCAS scores, and compiles everything in a central location and then distributes all the information out to medical schools that you apply to.
When's the best time to take the MCAT, and what are some good resources and strategies on studying for the MCAT?
Well, in terms of taking the MCAT, the best time to take it is when you're prepared, when you have taken all the courses that it tests and done a good, thorough, complete review. Typically, students do that at the end of their junior year, which is also the time they would apply to medical school. In terms of when during the summer between your junior and senior year, it's probably a good idea to try and take it early in the summer, so that if you feel the need, you'll have time to take it again for that application cycle. And in terms of preparation, certainly learn the course material when you're taking the courses, so that when you do a review, it is just that, it's a review. And then there are lots of self-study types of materials through a number of different test preparation companies, or I'm sure that most schools, or at least most cities where schools are located, have test prep companies that can come in and actually do the reviews for students.
Once should one apply to medical school, and how do I go about it? And are there resources available to assist in one's application process?
So how does one...
I'm sorry. When should one apply to medical school, and how do one go about it?
Okay.
And are there resources available to assist in the application process?
Okay, so traditionally, again, students apply after their junior year if what they want to do is go right from, they want to graduate from college in May, for instance, and then start medical school right away. So you apply for medical school the summer before you expect to start medical school. Now that doesn't mean that that's the only time you can apply. A lot of students decide they want to take a year off, and so they will wait and apply the summer after they graduate, and then start medical school the following summer, which gives them time to maybe pursue some things they'd like to do, travel, or a lot of students will do something like join AmeriCorps, or a number of different things, backpack through Europe, something that they've always wanted to do. So a lot of students decide to take that gap year, and so they don't apply to medical school until the following summer. But typically, if you look at it in terms of timing to go to medical school, you apply to medical school the summer before you expect to start and matriculate into medical school.
Medical school is getting ever more expensive. Are there any scholarships available for medical school?
Well, and again, each school has its own specific scholarship program. Most students will get loans through FAFSA, which is the federal program, and students can get loans that will pretty much cover their expenses, their tuition, and their living expenses. They won't be rich; they'll have to live like poor medical students, but you can do it. And then again, scholarships are individual by schools, so it just depends on where you're accepted.
Could you give us some good suggestions on obtaining good letters of recommendation, getting the clinical exposure, and having the extracurricular activities?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. In terms of letters, again, I think that's something that people underestimate, the importance of getting to know your professors. You will need letters of evaluation, and the more personal the letter, the better the professor knows you, the better the letter will be for you in terms of helping you get into medical school. You need to get to know your professor. You need to go to class. You need to say hello when you go in. You need to sit up front. You need to pay attention. You need to say goodbye. You need to stay after and ask questions. You need to go into office hours. You need to help other students in the class if they need help. You could talk to the professor about research opportunities. You can talk to the professor about other professors of other courses, but you have to get to know your professors. We have a lot of students that will come in when they're applying and say, well, I was in these large classes, I never got to know my professor, you know, I'm not real outgoing. You have to get over that. You have to get to know your professors, because those letters are an important part of your application.
And what about maybe clinical exposure?
Clinical exposure, lots of ways you can do that. There's, first of all, shadowing. Your school might have a shadowing program. Of course, we do at USC. We have a couple of different shadowing programs. But if your school doesn't, you can certainly contact local hospitals, local doctor's office, and find out if there's a process by which you can shadow in their establishment. Community service, you know, most hospitals have community service programs, and typically not terribly hard to get involved with. There's usually an orientation, maybe some training beforehand. But you definitely, if you're going to do that, you want to let the coordinator of the program know that you want to experience patients and doctors. You might let them know that you're interested in a healthcare profession, so you're very interested in working with patients. You don't want to be put somewhere working in medical records that's not really going to benefit you in terms of clinical exposure. And then the other thing is just getting a job in a healthcare area. There are a lot of, it's tough to do without some sort of training for a position, but there are things you could do. You can get certified to be a phlebotomist or an EMT or cardiovascular technician. There are lots of, or a CNA, you know, certified nursing assistant. There are lots of things you can do that would help you get employment in a healthcare area.
How important would you say about extracurricular activities?
Well, certainly they're important. I wouldn't go overboard. You don't want to overdo it so that you it harms your grades in any way. You got to make sure you keep your grades up. You don't want to spread yourself too thin. Extracurricular activities, if you have an interest in something, great, go ahead and pursue it. If you want to be involved in some of the fraternities or sororities for any reason, that's perfectly fine. But again, quality is a lot more important than quantity. You don't want to just go out and get involved in a bunch of things because you think you need to put that on your application. You need to be prudent in certainly, again, spreading yourself too thin. Make sure that your time is well spent. And yeah, if you're interested in something that you want to do, go ahead and get involved.
And could you give us a year-by-year track, starting with the first year, that a pre-med student is highly recommended to follow, assuming that he or she will apply at the end of their junior year for medical school?
Well, academically, students by the end of their junior year typically need to have completed a year of general biology, a year of general chemistry, a year of organic chemistry, and a year of physics. Those are typically the courses that med schools require. There are a handful of med schools that have extra requirements, but those are the basic ones. So you want to have those completed by the end of your junior year. We typically tell freshmen, don't worry about anything your first semester. You know, learn about college, learn how long it takes you to study and get A's, you know, or maybe A's and a B. But you really want to try and get those A's, mostly A's and maybe a couple of B's, but you need to figure out how much time you need to do that. Once you've done that, then maybe slowly start getting involved in either shadowing or maybe some community service, those sorts of things, but then sort of progress into making sure that you get a good amount of shadowing opportunities throughout your first 3 years. Make sure that you do have the opportunity to do some sort of a long-term community service project, those sorts of things.
Thank you very much for your time, ma'am.
You're welcome.